Devlin Robinson. Let me tell you a little bit about Devlin. First of all, he has two uncles that St. Clair knows very well, Tom Robinson and Dave Robinson. Dave was a policeman in Upper St. Clair for probably over 35 years, and Tom Robinson we know has a little business right down the road here. Devlin graduated from Central Catholic High School in 2001, and he enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps at that time. After 9/11, he changed his contract. He wanted to be a rifleman, and he saw action twice in Iraq and Afghanistan. He was involved in many battles as part of the Task Force Tarawa in Iraq, and then deployed to Afghanistan as a designated marksman. He also participated in training soldiers in Afghanistan and leading them in many times in operations. He volunteered, wow, this is amazing, to an assignment in a heavy weapons platoon team in Fallujah. You'll all remember all the action around Fallujah. Devlin, when he came back, founded the Veterans Medical Technology, a company that serves many in veterans hospitals. He has a Master of Business Administration from the University of Pittsburgh. Devlin volunteers as a member of a service of returning veterans that's called Semper Fi Odyssey, and it helps to get veterans placed in new careers. And Devlin also is very, very active in a home for veterans, a shelter located in Pittsburgh. Devlin has served his country in so many ways. You talk about bravery and valor. This he's got it in spades, and he thinks so much of the men and women that he served with that he wants to continue to serve them as they return home. We're fortunate today to have Devlin as our 8th annual featured speaker, and I'd like you to give him a hearty welcome.
Thank you.
It's always the grunt that screws everything up. Good morning. First of all, I'd like to honor and mention our distinguished guests, Councilwoman Means, the Upper St. Clair Board of Directors, Mrs. McGarvey, and my friend, Jed Mertz. I am honored and humbled to be before you today in dedication of this park. Thank you. First and foremost, I want to begin by recognizing the veterans in this crowd. If you could raise your hand again in recognition. It is because of your sacrifice that this nation and its citizens continue to be safe and free. At some point in your life, you knew a service member and wondered if you had what it takes to be like them. Whether you volunteered or were drafted, you raised your hand and took an oath to commit a portion of your life to serve selflessly in the face of uncertainty. You did not know where you would be assigned, whether you would go to combat, or whether you would return home in one piece or at all. Yet, you went anyways, like so many others before you. Happy Veterans Day. Yesterday marks the 100th anniversary of its predecessor, Armistice Day. It was changed to Veterans Day to honor those brave Americans before them that fought to win us our freedom, defend our shores, expand our borders, and bind a tattered nation while ensuring freedom for all citizens. Historians debate how World War I started and even how it festered to afflict the continent with lacerated trenches. It was a time of antiquated tactics that collided with new technology. Rifled muskets gave way to machine guns, cannonballs to poison gas artillery, horse cavalry to tanks, and weaponized flight made its debut. Yet through it all, the knife was the most trusted weapon, and a woolen trench coat, its armor. The national sentiment at the time was to keep America isolated and behind its borders. But we just couldn't stand by and watch as civilization descended further into chaos. The carnage ended at the 11th hour on the 11th day of the 11th month, with fighting raging up until the last whistle whined. The last soldier to die was an American, Sergeant Henry Guntner, at 10:59 a.m. They fought until the end because they knew every inch of land would be leveraged in the ensuing peace. The average age of the American soldier who was tasked with making the world safe for democracy was only 19 years old. After that peace, new lines were drawn in the earth, monarchies toppled, and the American century was born. It was General Pershing that said at the end that we'd be back to fighting here in 20 years. He was off by 10 months. Again, the world turned to that isolated nation that had delivered peace before, and their most precious resource answered the call to restore democracy and defend the homeland. 4 years, 2 continents, and 400,000 deaths later, the skies fell silent once again, surrender signed, and we became committed to preserve the peace for what we achieved in war. On that day, another war started, the Cold War, and with it, more American citizens giving their lives to fight the offspring of that great war. As we shunned our isolationist robes and bore the shield to defend the torch of democracy, unsheathing the sword in the mountains of Korea and the jungles of Vietnam. These conflicts, mired in controversy, were fought once again by our 20-year-old citizens. These wars and your sacrifice are not forgotten nor disparaged. They have enriched our legacy and bestowed pride on future generations. And as that war ended as well, new wars emerged, also from the offspring of the Great War, from lines drawn in the Middle East. This enemy, mired in theological ideals, followed its deceased siblings of imperialism, fascism, and communism down the path of genocide and totalitarianism. This time, the torch was passed to myself and my generation in Iraq and Afghanistan, Syria and Africa. Just as then, we now wind down these wars. We know that we have not seen the end of war. We know that we are hopeful that a better world shall emerge from the ashes of blood and carnage of the past. A world devoted to dignity of life and the deliverance of our Creator's most precious gift of liberty, tolerance, equality, and justice. Just like today, as 100 years ago, we have heroes returning home to the new struggle of assimilation. As these brave men and women took the oath to deliver us our freedom, we must take the oath to ensure their sacrifices do not dissipate in vain. We must pledge to help the veteran by visiting a VA hospital patient, donations to veterans charities, and hire our nation's veterans. And why not? This generation's veteran, at the average age of now 20 and a half years old, has been taught chemistry, physics, ballistics, avionics, and electronics to take the fight to those who wish to do us harm in some of the most brutal terrain on earth. They train to be able to take a life or save a life and decide which one in less than a second. They can be repurposed for excellence, just as prior generations before them. As T.S. Eliot once said, we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we began and know the place for the first time. These brave men and women are returning home to this place for the first time and are ready to explore their newly required skills and talents for you. The same ingenuity that has transformed our surroundings here in this city, that led to the Renaissance from a city of sooty furnace to a clean technological hub. The same imagination that transformed an old railroad line to the peaceful Montour Trail, and even the prolific mind of guys like Ched Mertz and T.J. McCarvey to look out that window on a grassy knoll and see this beautiful park. It is with this last message I bid you farewell, that your sons and daughters have served you well and faithfully in places most dare never venture. They bring with you so many skills forged in the inferno of combat. Of those are loyalty, honor, and commitment. Their strength has brought the world to a much finer place, and now it's our turn to take care of them.